Hello everyone, welcome to another video on social science research methodologies. The subject of this presentation is research in social science. So to begin with, research is a set of systematic actions that aims to investigate and study a phenomenon or phenomena, which is the plural of phenomenon, to discover knowledge or gain knowledge about discoveries. So through researches, we seek to investigate and study a phenomenon or a set of phenomena or to discover new knowledge or to gain knowledge about existing discoveries. So a research can both, again, involve discovering new discoveries or discovering new discoveries about a pre-existing discovery. It's systematic because it follows a set of protocols and to that are in compliance with scientific methods, ethics, and regulations. And it's also systematic because it's experimental, quasi-experimental, and non-experimental. So it doesn't matter what topic or subject you conduct your research on. You will always seek to, number one, discover knowledge or discover new knowledge or discover knowledge about an existing knowledge, and that your research will be systematic. You won't simply go and start typing on Google or a literature review source to get information. Right, instead, you will be following a set of systematic approaches to make sure that you're following the scientific regulations and protocols. And then lastly, you need to understand that when you are doing a research, you're commonly looking at three types of techniques, which is experimental, quasi-experimental, mental, and non-experimental, which I'll come to a second. So how does research differ in social science? It's not different except that we are putting our research in a context of social science, where we seek to study, social-related activities, human-related activities and changes, uh, through which we can conduct analysis to explore, study, and test important social and human-related phenomena. So if a research involving uh, if a research involving chemical subject requires you to go through a chemical source, a social science research will require you to refer to human activities or human societies as your source of data for your research. Everything else, everything else is the same. However, there are, as we have known by now, that there are two types of sciences. There's science, natural science, and then there's um, knowledge or education or thought-based education. However, social science is considered under the category of sciences or natural sciences, although it still has humanistic and social connotation. So in a way, we embed our scientific method in a social context. We apply our scientific methods and techniques in the sort of context where the variables are humans or human activities or human phenomena rather than objects or rather than natural objects. So the natural sciences are different from the social sciences in several respects. The natural sciences are very precise, very accurate, and also they're independent of the person who's making the scientific observation and who's doing the study. For example, if a scientific experiment in physics, wherein the scientist measures the speed of, let's say, the speed of sound, would always produce same exact result. It will retain the replicability characteristic of a research or a scientific study. However, in a social science context, social science context, if you're studying, let's say, the phenomenon of happiness, or if you're studying or measuring a person's happiness, then you will find that the same person is probably happy on one day and is not happy on a different day, because you're not dealing with objects as you would in the case of physics. In this case, your participants, your subject of study, are human beings. So, although it falls under the scientific realm uh, of study and research, but while we are performing analysis of social science phenomena, we have to be careful to factor in those very socialistic or humanistic confounding variables in our analysis, because it's not pure science, it's human, and human behavior is subject to change by all types of factors in relation to an object. So some properties of research, it doesn't matter if it's in social science context uh, or let's say chemical science context. A research has to be systematic. It has to follow a system where the biases are outlawed and avoided. It has to be logic. It has to follow a logical series of steps. It has to have a start and an end. It has to be empirical. There should be no involvement of subjectivity or feeling of the researcher or the studier. It has to be verifiable, meaning if a different scientist receive the same the material of that test, he or she should be able to verify it. He or she should be able to test it and verify it. And replicability is that if he or she should also be able to replicate the same result as the first person did. If it's not verifiable, and if it's not replicable, and if it's not empirical, if it's not logical or systematic, then it fails to qualify the properties of a scientific research method, and therefore it will be considered as invalid. A couple of things about types of research. There's I know a lot of students who graduate from their masters and PhD programs, when they go to the industry, they treat industry research as academic research. So it's not the case a lot of time, and the academic research is called pure research on the textbooks, while the industry research, where you work for a company or for an employer, is called applied research. So pure research involves looking for new discoveries, or looking for new theories and hypotheses, or building knowledge, and it has more epistemological connotation and implication, while applied research is you're only looking at certain problem, and you're not adding to the knowledge to the academic realm of research. You're only working at one problem at a time. So if your employer gives you a problem of, let's say, you need to do a research on market trends involving a product, then you have the problem written to you, presented to you, and you only work on that problem, and which has, again, does not have academic connotation. It has a more practical connotation. So you'll have to produce a practical, tangible result for that task given to you. And research design. Remember that there are two types of research design, and it relates to the system to the research being systematic. When I said research needs to be systematic, is that it has to have determined what type of design it has. Is this an experimental design, or it's a non-experimental design, which I explain in a minute. So research designs, the two main and important research designs, experimental and non-experimental, they are different in a lot of ways. An experimental design is when you actually do an experiment. When you actually introduce an experiment, you introduce a change to your subject, or to your subject of study. In a non-experimental design or observational design, you don't introduce an experiment, you don't introduce a change to your subject. Rather, you observe it. So, for example, in experimental design, if you give medicine to the patients and then you check the effect of those medicine, you're introducing a change, you're introducing an experiment. Um, and in a non-experimental design, you don't introduce an experiment. You simply observe. You simply observe, or you simply analyze the data that are already available. You don't manipulate the cost variable or the independent variable. You just observe what's out there and you draw your inference and your analysis based on that. So there are two types of experimental: quasi-experimental and experimental. They both have, again, pure scientific applicability, where your subject are almost all the time humans, because or living things, where you again apply an experiment and you measure and study and analyze the result of it. Again, non-experimental, you're only observing the trends and behaviors that already exist in your subject of your study. There are two types. There's cross-sectional study. Cross-sectional study is when you're collecting information at a single point in time. For example, if you're doing a non-experimental research, if you're doing a research based on non-experimental design, for example, you go to a class where everybody's studying mathematics, then if you spend 3 hours there, then it's a cross-sectional study, because you only spend 3 hours in that class, and then you would analyze, you collect and analyze your observation for that specific point in time that you were there in that class. Longitudinal study is on the other hand, is when you're collecting data, or when you're analyzing the data for a specific for a period of time. So, for example, if you come to this class for like 2 months every Tuesday, then you're doing a longitudinal study where you're looking at behaviorals, where you're observing behaviors and you're studying them, analyzing them over a period of time. Let's say every Friday, and then every Saturday, every Sunday, you would like to see how, for example, a phenomenon of interest, is changing, and is behaving at over a period of time, at time intervals. So there are two types of quantitative and qualitative studies, which I won't get into that now. But while explaining these, some of these are qualitative, one or two are maybe quantitative, but these are the sort of non-experimental designs that are commonly used in researches: content analysis, case study. Of course, content analysis involves studying a particular content, or a paradigm of a phenomenon. Case studies, when you are doing study of a particular case of interest. Ethnography is something, as this photo describes, where you're spending time. This has a highly qualitative nature, where you spend time with a collective of people, and you observe certain behavior that you're interested in, and you draw your analysis based on that. Focus group is when you are looking at a particular group of interest that your research is focused on, a constraint. For example, if you would like to research, if you're doing research on, let's say, children between the relationship between children of 15 and 18 years old, and their interest in video games, then your focus group would be students of children of 15 to 18 years old. That will be your focus group. Nothing outside that parameter will be on your focus group. And sociometry this has more quantitative nature, where you measure certain social behavior and social trends of interest in a society. With all being said, I hope that this video was helpful in understanding research and research design. Thank you for your time.